folks. Welcome to a podcast about Catholic things. This is Eric, the ambassador of common sense, and I'm here with
Dan, the ambassador of nonsense. Welcome, everyone.
And here I am again at the last second, adjusting my microphone volumes and stuff like that. What happens is I end up recording on another computer, and then I decide, well, I'm going to record on this computer today, and then I have to readjust everything, and I keep switching. But now I'm all good. Okay. So, we did not really plan a subject for today, but in order to keep the momentum going, we're going to force ourselves to record, and we're going to take, I guess every now and then we're going to take kind of the classic apologetic questions that Protestants ask and give kind of some more in-depth than most apologists would give. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. You hadn't said anything in a long, long time, and I thought,
sorry.
Well,
Yeah.
He must be reading, or I lost him.
I am actually reading.
But here's the thing. If you want to build a house and you start laying bricks down in an organized way to build a good, strong foundation, then you make this house that has a lot of floors, a lot of different rooms, and a lot of different stuff. And you can explore each room in a lot of detail. But if you don't do real well with your foundation, you end up with less of a house. You can't put as much there. And so when you've got, say, a Protestant who has this question that normally would go to an apologist, he gives general, and he should, gives kind of foundational answers. Like, do you worship Mary? No, we do not worship Mary. And then a simple explanation of what we believe about Mary.
Right,
but
distinctions between worship and honor and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The answer can be a lot deeper than that. It's just that a lot of times there's no reason to go into it because the normal Protestant isn't going to understand the answer because he doesn't have the foundation that a traditional Catholic would have.
Right.
So I'm kind of thinking we could go in deeper than the normal Protestant might understand, to make it at least more interesting for Catholics who have already heard this answer 5 billion times.
Well, that's true. I hadn't even thought of that aspect of it, but yeah, sometimes like I'll listen to, like I used to jump on the radio and listen to, what is it, the afternoon show when I lived up in Michigan.
Shows.
Like one of the EWTN shows, where people would call in with questions, and a lot of times they would say, okay, Protestants only, and stuff like that. And
yeah.
But you're right. They seemed a little bit unsatisfying because after you have listened to about 3 or 4 of those shows, of course, Protestants who want to challenge Catholics tend to ask the same, I don't know, dozen or so questions over and over again. There's not a lot there. That you find that's new, and the answers tend to always go the same depth and no further. It's almost like there are straightforward, I don't want to use the word pat, but kind of like that, answers that we have. And sometimes it's nice to say, well, wait a minute, let's explore that a little bit more and think about what that might mean. And so one of the things that I find often is that the foundational thing, the thing that you got to get right before you can really have the deeper discussion, I think a lot of times just has to do with vocabulary more than anything else.
Yeah, it sure does. And once you know the vocabulary, it almost becomes boring to listen to apologetics.
Right.
Because
right.
it's the same answers over and over again. And it's like, well, the thing is, you would think it would be more interesting because every now and then they offer to allow Protestants to argue on that point. But the arguments are almost always circular. And again, it keeps you from ever going any deeper because you end up arguing about the basics that, that we got over learning a long time ago. We don't even think about learning anymore. Because when you go into a house, you don't look a whole lot at the foundation. The foundation is there, and then you can look at all the other rooms and look at the fireplaces and the mantles and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So that's what our hopes are for this show today and future shows like it. But we'll see how it goes. Maybe what our answers aren't all that deep, but we're not scripting any of this. Like we don't script any of our shows, so we'll see how it goes. Yeah. Okay, so I guess one of the first subjects that I've heard Protestants ask a lot on other podcasts and shows, and also this is one that when I got married to Vicky, her dad is a Protestant minister, and he brought it up, and that is that Jesus died on the cross for us one time and paid for all sin in that one sacrifice. But Catholics believe that we re-sacrifice Jesus every day at the Mass.
Oh.
And it kind of devalues it. In our mind, it would devalue the one sacrifice, as if that wasn't enough, as if we have to keep doing it, otherwise it doesn't pay for the sins.
That's one of those things. First of all, one of the things that...
I have to get coffee while you talk.
Okay, I'll start talking. Every Catholic is taught from a very young age that Jesus died and rose from the dead, and he can't die anymore. So I think having that in mind from the very beginning as a teaching of our faith allows Catholics, even as children, to understand something about the Mass that I guess Protestants tend to miss. And not because Protestants don't have that teaching, but because Protestants don't have that teaching sort of pounded into them as a Catholic teaching from their very formative years. So, when a Protestant starts trying to kind of scope out the Catholic mindset, he doesn't have that foundation that says, well, Christ can't die anymore. If he did, he would know that no Catholic would ever, no Catholic that knows what he's about, would ever suggest that we sacrifice Christ again, that we somehow bring about the death of Christ again. It can't happen again. But what we, a lot of times I think what Catholics tend to answer is, oh, well, the cross was a bloody sacrifice and the Mass is an unbloody sacrifice. And so we're offering Christ again, but in an unbloody manner. But that only goes so far, because I think what you miss when you leave it there is that there's a real intimate relationship between the Mass and the cross. If we look at the Last Supper and the crucifixion...
so hold on here a second.
Yeah.
Okay, I've heard that said several times, and I guess I never thought too deeply about it being an unbloody sacrifice, because when I'm at Mass or when I'm thinking about the Mass, I don't necessarily I'm not thinking in terms of bloody and unbloody. I mean, there's the sacrifice. Right. Is that something that was spelled out somewhere, or is it just a way that people started talking about it?
Well, it's something that was developed in order to make the explanation more clear. So I don't think it was. I think the reason it was spelled out was in order to introduce a distinction between the cross and the Mass, while preserving the essential identity of the two. And so what we see in for example, the Baltimore Catechism, is an explanation that the Mass is the same sacrifice as the cross. But what's different is not that they're a different sacrifice, but that the manner of offering the sacrifice is different. The cross was offered in a bloody manner. The Mass offers the very same sacrifice, but in an unbloody manner. And that's,
Okay, yeah.
But that's the thing that, I think that it may be easy to miss. If a Catholic just says, well, it's the same sacrifice. Oh, okay, so you're offering the same sacrifice again and again and again. It's like, well, okay, wait a minute. No, that's not quite what's going on here. Because what happens is at the Last Supper, that's when Christ made the commitment to offer himself in the form of a wedding feast. If you think about what a marriage is, it's a union, and at the Last Supper, a union between Christ and us, humans, the human race, was completed. He had taken on our nature and became human, he who was divine. Mm-hmm. And at the Last Supper, he gave directly to his apostles, but with a command to then perpetuate, the ability to join with him completely according to our natures, his nature. He said of the bread, this is my body, and of the wine, he changed it into his blood, and then he gave them, the apostles, to eat and drink. And in doing so, he made it so that the apostles entered into a complete union with him, his body with their bodies. But Christ wasn't dead at the time that he did this. So when he gave them his body, held his body in his hands and gave it to them to eat, he was giving them his living body, which was united to his human soul, which in the mystery of the hypostatic union is united to his divinity. He's only one person. And when he gave us his human nature to consume and unite ourselves with the apostles initially, and then us through the perpetuation of the Mass as commanded by him, we enter into a union with him that completes the marriage of the Lamb. That's what's written about in Revelation 19, chapter 19, verse 9. It says, "The angel said to me, write this, blessed are those who are invited to the marriage supper of the Lamb." And this is right after the angels are singing about the bride being prepared, and now is the time for the wedding of the Lamb. Right after that, we see the rider on the white horse. The heaven opened, and behold, a white horse, he who sat upon it, called Faithful and True, and in righteousness he judges and makes war. His eyes are like a flame of fire, and so forth. And then eventually becomes clear that this is Christ. This rider on the white horse then rides into battle and defeats the beast. Now, how was the beast defeated? By the cross. What happened right before the cross? The Last Supper. So this chapter 19 of Revelation is revealing what really was going on with the Last Supper and then the cross. A marriage followed by the sacrifice of the cross. Christ united himself to his bride, and then united with his bride, he rode in and defeated the beast by sacrificing himself on the cross. He offered himself as a sacrifice to the Father, but he offered that united to his bride. So the idea is that he calls us to unite ourselves with him in his sacrifice of the cross. the way he does that is that he mystically makes the cross itself, that very same sacrifice, present to us everywhere throughout the world in a way that we can participate not just intentionally, but actually by receiving and then being united with him, just as the apostles were the very first time at the Last Supper as he goes to the cross. And so what actually happens during the Mass is that we get mystically transported into the cross through our reception of Holy Communion.
Yeah.
And the priest acts in the person of Christ. Now Christ, he took the bread and said, "This is my body which is offered for you." He's offering it then, and then what does he do? He goes and fulfills that offering on the cross. So the cross is the fulfillment of the Mass.
If you kind of think about it in terms of a story, and I guess, C.S. Lewis kind of portrayed this well in the Lion movie, or the Lion book.
Oh, the Lion,
Witch, and the Wardrobe. But here we are, Satan sees that Jesus has come down and become a man, and there are times even that Satan doubts, is this really God? But, he's plotting and plotting and plotting, and he's seeing that, all right, I'm about to spring this trap, and God, who came down to try to rescue man or try to save man and try to make man the children of God, the adopted children of God, is about to fail because I've got all these people and I've got things lined up. And as he's lining this up, there's this supper where Jesus says these things that probably didn't quite make any sense to the devil at the time. And then he springs this trap, and here we see Jesus crucified, and he's thinking, I've done it. I've won. It didn't work. He didn't come down and save him. And that's exactly what saves us. And it's suddenly that between the Last Supper and the resurrection, suddenly it's all flipped over, and now man is saved.
Yeah.
It's I don't know. It's every now and then I think about that, and I think the closest story to showing that was probably the Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe. But even then, it didn't quite do it.
No, and then C.S. Lewis he always lacked a little bit of something because he never became Catholic.
Yeah.
But that's exactly right. And so what the Mass does is it's our participation in that very event that flipped it.
Yeah, and the apostles were participating in the crucifixion when they sat at that Last Supper.
Right.
And he had, I guess we should bring up the verses, but he had very specifically told his apostles, "You will eat my flesh." And they're like, "Well, didn't I really eat it?" And he said, "No, you will gnaw on my flesh.
Yeah.
You will chew it
that's right.
with
Yeah,
your teeth."
the John, the Eucharistic sermon in John, I think it's John chapter 6, right? John chapter 6, Jews murmured against him because he said, "I am the bread which came down from heaven." And they're saying, "Isn't this Jesus, son of Joseph? We know who his father and mother are." He says, "Don't murmur among yourselves. No one can come to me unless the Father who sent me draws him, and I will raise him up on the last day. It is written in the prophets, and they shall all be taught by God. Everyone who has heard and learned from the Father comes to me." And then later he says, "Truly I say to you," not the name of truly I say to you, "I am the bread of life. Your fathers ate the manna in the wilderness, and they died. This is the bread which comes down from heaven, that a man may eat and not die. I am the living bread which came down from heaven. If anyone eats of this bread, he will live forever. And the bread which I shall give for the life of the world is my flesh."
I'm not...
And then they continue disputing. He says to them, "Truly I say to you, unless you eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, you have no life in you." So now he's introducing drinking the blood. He who eats my flesh and drinks my blood has eternal life. Yeah, that's, all of the English translations just use the word eat again and again and again.
Yeah.
And a lot of Protestants will try to say, well, he's just using, what he really means is partake or participate or something like that. But no, when those who have, scholars who have studied the earlier versions of the gospel in their, let's see, John's, I don't know, was John's written in Greek originally or what, but they've said that no, those earlier versions actually use different words each time, and each time that he repeats it and uses, says, eat my flesh, he uses a word with a little bit more physicality to it. To where it's almost gross the way he's saying it.
This is a physical thing you're going to do. You will eat my body. He promised this and even allowed everybody to leave him. And then people leave him, and the apostles, of course, say, well, he says, are you going to go too? And they're like, well, where are we going to go? We have nowhere to go. And so after promising, you will eat my body, he sits down at this weird supper and starts breaking pieces of bread and saying, here,
this is my body.
Is my body.
Yeah, that's true. Well, it's also interesting. He says, when they're kind of murmuring against him and everything, and they say, well, who can listen to this? He says, well, what if you saw the Son of Man ascending to where he was before in heaven? And then he says, it is the Spirit that gives life. The flesh is of no avail. The words that I have spoken to you are spirit and life. Some translations say spirit and truth. Yeah, so some translations say spirit and truth. My Bible says spirit and life, but I like the spirit and truth because earlier in that same gospel, he's at the well with the Samaritan woman.
Yeah.
And they're kind of going back and forth, but at one point he says to her, woman, believe me, the hour is coming when neither on this mountain, which is where her people worship, nor in Jerusalem will you worship the Father. You worship what you do not know. We worship what we know, for salvation is from the Jews. But the hour is coming, and now is, when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth. So it's almost as if, having said this to the woman, and of course for the benefit of everybody, because obviously that conversation got recorded, then later he says this thing about eating the flesh of the Son of Man, and he says, my words are spirit and truth, as though to say, and what I told her, that we're going to worship the Father in spirit and truth, this is how you're going to do it. You're going to eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood.
Yeah, that is the
so there's
truth of
a whole lot that goes on. It's kind of interesting that the three synoptic gospels all have a account of the Eucharistic institution that where he actually breaks the bread and says, "This is my body." The Gospel of John doesn't have that account, and yet seems to have more like woven through it about supporting the mystery of the Eucharist, and opening up that understanding of the Mass, more so than the other Gospels do. It's kind of interesting. Ironic, I guess.
Yeah. So it's the Mass is the truth, and those who can't accept the truth left Jesus, and those who can't accept the truth do not join the Catholic Church, and they miss out on the wedding feast.
Right.
And I wonder if you could kind of equate this wedding feast to the day you stand and make your vows at a wedding, and the Mass is like sex. You
could. I think that'd make a lot of people uncomfortable.
Yeah, but that is how you take part in the marriage. It's not only how, but that is the climax of the marriage.
When you think about it, I mean, Jesus referred to his relationship to the church in nuptial terms, both in little hints, like, for example, meeting the Samaritan woman at the well, that to the Jews, that actually had nuptial significance.
Yeah.
But so Jesus referred to his relationship to the church as a marriage, and he, used the concept of a wedding feast and that kind of stuff. But it's even more, I think, interesting that the Bible itself opens with a wedding, which is the wedding of Adam and Eve, and it closes with a wedding, which is the marriage of the Lamb.
Yeah.
I mean, practically. I mean, within a chapter or two.
Right. It's
so it kind of bookended, the whole thing. And it's like, okay, well, wait a minute. All of salvation history is one big marriage story.
Yeah. And it's, you go back to the point that, religion itself is about our relationship with God and his relationship with us, and the fact that he wants the relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. Plus,
it's not
all the times,
it's not just something you study. There's a relationship there.
All the times that God in the Old Testament always refers to when the Israelites are, worshiping false gods, he calls it playing the harlot consistently. Yeah. I mean, he even in the Old Testament, he's likening his relationship to then the Israelites, from whom salvation will come, of course, ultimately to his church, in marital terms like that.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So what's the next thing we'll
move on?
Talk about?
Okay. We were going to talk about, we touched on this, but,
yeah,
concupiscence, and I guess, there's the whole question of, predestination and.
Oh, right.
Hey,
you know what?
The will as it exists.
Hold on a minute.
And whether or not.
You might want
whether or not we really have free will.
Hey, everybody, I just want to apologize. You suddenly probably heard my voice get a lot nicer. I properly tuned my microphone.
I'll just cut out the whole first half hour of the show.
There we go. The first half, we don't need that anyway.
Okay. We're talking about kind of a little bit of predestination, a little bit of free will, a little bit of concupiscence, and whether or not someone can choose to do good, whether or not fallen man can choose to do good without the grace of God.
Yeah, that's
are
that's
all of our sins evil?
Or are all of our acts evil necessarily without God's grace having fallen? I know that one of the things that, Protestants, struggle with is this idea that we can't justify ourselves. We can only be justified in Christ as a gift of God, as an act of grace. And I think they incorrectly turn that into, we can't do anything that's good. But part of the problem is that I think you need to kind of use a little bit of, subtlety and understanding when you think about the word good and what you mean by it when you say something like that. Because on the one hand, if you think about, okay, God created, men. God created us. Okay, so put Adam and Eve, put them in the garden, right? Okay, so, and he gave, he said, hey, you can eat of all the fruits of the garden. And, except for the tree in the middle of the garden that, I said don't eat that. But, the point is, he created us to eat. He didn't create us, eating isn't the completion of our purpose. But what I mean is that it's part of our nature to eat. He created us with the intention that we eat. So in doing that, we're fulfilling a part of our nature we're fulfilling a part of something that he intended us to do, for the goodness of our bodies, for the sake of our health and the right working of our bodies and all the balance of electrolytes and nutritions that let us be fit and strong and so on and so forth. So when we eat properly, we're doing something that's good in a manner of the understanding of good. It's not, that doesn't necessarily rise to a level of something that you might call virtue, but it is good. So we can do good things just naturally. What we can't do is, without God's grace, now that we've sinned, and when we're in, even after baptism, when we're in a state of sin, we can't do anything that's meritorious. So we can't do anything that merits the grace of God and merits a participation in the joys of the saints and so on and so forth. That's what we need God for. That's what we need grace for, is to turn ourselves to those supernatural, maybe we could call them supernatural virtues. But the idea of, doing something that is, not merely naturalistic, but, because of the intentionality of it, is justified before God. So that's one of those things. I think that there's a lot of, failure to, it's kind of like, I'm trying to think of a good analogy here that if you, use a term in one way and then because the term applies, you go use it in another way, but because you're using the same term, you think that you're making a solid argument.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's,
so there's a difference between good and meritorious, and it's kind of an animal can do something good, because
it's kind of like if you bring your cat home from the vet and you say to your kids, "All right, well, the cat is healthy," and then the kids go and eat the cat, and you say, "What'd you do that for?" "Well, you said it was healthy, Dad."
But as for animals, animals can do good things.
Well, yeah.
So
but they can never do meritorious things because their good things are all instinctual and not by free will.
Right. And people can do more meritorious things, but not without the grace of God.
Having fallen, right.
Having fallen, we can't merit anything. But it's not that we take the crucifixion and claim it as our own and then say, okay, now we have the merit of the crucifixion. God allows us to merit by way of the crucifixion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And of course, the way we take part in that is we go back to the Mass.
That's right. I mean, the sacramental way of the church is how we achieve that. Even starting with baptism, that, it restores grace. And then from a state of grace, we can unite with Christ in the Mass as he goes to the cross. And therefore we can merit through the cross that which God is, wants to invite us into.
Right. It's not like, look, there must be some merit to things that we do, because Paul himself said that the cross was lacking, which we know it wasn't lacking anything. It's just that
we make up for what was lacking in the cross. Yeah, and what that is exactly is our participation. So the cross itself is super abundant in its merits, but we have to do something. I mean, God is the first actor, but our free will has to be a response in order for us to receive the fruits of that.
Yeah.
And that, so we definitely have free will. I guess the idea is that I guess there must be some Protestant, and I gotta admit, I'm not schooled in the various Protestant thoughts, Jansenism and Calvinism and so on and so forth. Even in Lutheranism, although I'm more familiar with Luther than some of the others, certainly. But I think there were some who believe that not only did man, maybe this was a Puritan idea too, not only did man like fall and become unable to gain his own justification, but that he perhaps completely lost free will in the fall. And it's almost like God, sort of just kind of randomly or arbitrarily selects certain people to say, okay, you're going to be saved, you're going to be saved, you're going to be saved, and then gives them the grace, therefore, to do that which would indicate that they're going to be saved. But there's no participation of their own free will in that equation or in that dynamic. I think that's actually how some models of Protestantism work.
That would stink.
That would stink. Well,
if that's the case, I see no reason to try anything ever.
Exactly. I mean, it's like, okay, well, either I have it or I don't. Then if I don't have it, then there's nothing I can do to get it. And if I do have it, it's just going to happen. I don't have to give it any effort.
What is the point of any religion then?
Well, yeah, exactly.
And why
sometimes I wonder about the reincarnational religions like Hinduism. It's like, well, okay, if you're going to be reincarnated and have another chance to make yourself, build yourself up, if you are in a life here that allows you to, have access to worldly pleasures and make this life easy and nice for you, why not just do that and say, well, I'll have to pay later because maybe I'll get reincarnated as a cricket or something like that.
Okay, but, just kill yourself.
So what? I'm still going to eventually make it. I mean, I'm destined eventually for nirvana or whatever. So I'll go ahead and take this cycle through my life and just kind of enjoy it.
If free will was not a part of our salvation, then there would be no reason for Christ to tell us, go proclaim the gospel.
That's right. Exactly. That the only reason to proclaim the gospel is because people are free to respond to it.
And it's a serious charge.
Yeah. Yeah. He wasn't, it wasn't a,
wasn't kidding.
Wasn't a suggestion. It's a command. It's a commission. But that brings, the image that, and I forget which teacher it was at St. Martin's School growing up, and they were talking about the Puritans and kind of their model of what's weird is I seem to remember this not from like religion class or anything like that, but from like maybe literature class or I don't think it was social studies. I think it was like some kind of English class or something like that. But this image that they had of God kind of holding you like you're a spider and God's holding the web that you're at the end of out over the fires, the pits of hell. And it's kind of like you're just at God's mercy to whether he's going to decide to drop it or keep you. Kind of that kind of a thing. But it's as arbitrary as just discarding a spider or something.
Well, if it were that arbitrary and if it were that cold, it would seem odd that he would come down and die for us at all.
Yeah, why would he bother dying for us if that's all he cares?
Yeah.
It's like I have a bunch
love
of people
is an
here.
act
I don't
of free
care.
will.
Maybe I'll select some to be saved, and but in order to save them, I got to go die for them. Okay, I'll go die for them so I can select them.
I'll just go do that real quick
to force them to be saved. Yeah, it's like it just doesn't make any sense at all.
And I get it. There's two of them here that are bundled into one because there's the saints and then there's statues of the saints.
Oh, and, that's right.
This.
Maybe we want to save the next one for next time.
I think we're okay then. Here's the thing though. I don't really have current events.
You don't have what?
Current events.
Oh,
I don't have much news.
Well, but I've got a few newsy things, but
hold on a second. Let me I am going to go through some of them and kind of pull them out as I'm just kind of do this on the fly. First of all, there's this weird thing where everybody wants to withdraw troops from Afghanistan. I don't know what it's about, but I can say something's wrong here. We've been in Afghanistan for like 20-something years. Interesting enough, Biden says that we will withdraw, that we will leave Afghanistan by September 11th. That's kind of, something's wrong here. Trump wanted to get us out of all the wars that he could. Trump wanted our boys home. Trump ended every conflict that he could end, and he just refused to start conflicts that were not in our best interests. And Trump did not stop the armed presence in Afghanistan. He didn't pull us out. I think there's something wrong here, and I have to wonder if maybe it has something to do with Russia.
Oh, you know what? That could be.
I mean, Russia and Afghanistan were going at it forever for a long time. That was it. That's how. And we, we helped Afghanistan. We kind of armed them against Russia, and then remember the whole Iran-Contra thing. Yep. I think Afghanistan was involved in that. I'm not really good with this history. I don't know this history. All I know is that Trump wanted to end all the wars that he could, but he didn't end that one. And the second Biden gets in, he's formally announcing that we're going to get troops out of Afghanistan. Something seems wrong with this, and I don't know what. But
the landscape of the world is going to change a lot during the Biden presidency.
Yeah, and we just need nonstop prayers.
Yeah.
Let's see. We've got ISIL in Iraq. There was a city in Baghdad that there was some suicide killer, I guess. 4 people are killed, 17 others are wounded. They were in Syria, they're in Iraq now. I don't know. It's building back up.
Yeah. It's a shame that, we talked about it last week, and there's more news already on that. They're very active.
The situation with Ukraine and Russia is getting more tense. The U.S. is putting more and more sanctions on Russia, and Russia keeps saying that they're going to retaliate somehow. They're not really saying how. You had mentioned that the real tension to watch is between Russia and China, because that the U.S. is not going to keep them in check, they're going to just start grabbing as much as they can. And it's weird that we're putting all this against Russia and none of it against China. It makes me think, okay, Biden's already decided China's got more money, probably, is what it is.
Yeah.
China's giving
something China,
Biden and everyone else involved more money, and that's why we're kind of siding against Russia in all of these. I'm not talking about Russia and China going against each other. I'm just saying that we keep criticizing Russia and we're not criticizing China, despite all these things that China is doing.
Yeah. In fact, what was the event? We tried to criticize China on something, and China said, "Hey, you just admitted that your whole system is built on racism, so don't talk to us about."
Yeah, we were talking about
about
killing genocide and stuff. I think we were specifically talking about killing Muslims.
Oh, that's right. Their treatment of Muslims.
Yeah,
because they've got Muslims in like concentration camps and stuff like that, I think.
Yeah. Meanwhile, in the U.S., we've got more and more mass shootings going on all of a sudden.
Oh, wow.
Remember 4 years, almost none? There were a couple here and there, and some of them were kind of big, but
you're hearing about them like 2 or 3 times a week now, it seems.
Yeah. We got well, where you are, FedEx.
FedEx, yep.
Indianapolis. Let's see. 8 people killed, 7 injured, and then he killed himself.
Right. Just a disgruntled, like somebody was fired or something like that. That was nuts.
Yeah, crazy. And then we've got more, police shootings that are causing riots. There's one in Chicago. Mayor Lightfoot, I guess, basically said, go ahead and destroy the city. They call for calm amidst fears of unrest. But, when the mayor comes out and says, okay, our police killed someone unjustly, instead of waiting for a trial or something like that, it basically says, it's almost like inviting people to riot. That's what's happening in these cities after city now. Now there was a shooting in Columbus, and they're trying to get the riots going there. I don't think they're going very well.
Trying to get them going. Well, the thing about the Columbus shooting, that was the one where that one they had full body cam, and they were able to show that this girl was using a knife to try to attack somebody or something like that when she was killed. Yeah. And it was like, so completely necessary to shoot her at that point. But I always kind of wish the police had held back a little bit and let the news get a little bit more, frenzied. And let them kind of develop their just to give it a little bit more punch in terms of maybe stripping away some of the credibility of the news.
But I don't understand how if that hasn't happened already, then it's not going to happen.
Yeah,
they don't have any credibility. They give people excuses to.
I mean, they don't have any credibility among thinking Americans, but look at how many Americans are non-thinking, and they just grab whatever headline the news gives them, whatever story,
I guess
whatever
that's
narrative,
thing.
And everybody goes.
Why
on
haven't
riots.
they learned yet? Why haven't they figured it out yet?
Well, that's true. So you do what you can. Certain people are never going to learn.
Yeah. So NASA awards SpaceX the contract to build the to get our next moon landing. I don't know if that's still going to happen. I kind of doubt that it's going to happen. Mm-hmm. I don't see Biden.
Yeah, he doesn't
following through with this. This is like a bunch of money that he would rather use somewhere else, and I don't know. We'll see. I don't see a whole lot of this kind of technology developing during the Biden years. Although, for the first time, it's in a private company instead of the government doing it.
Maybe SpaceX will reach a point where they decide, you know what, we can fund this ourselves. We don't need the government.
What's going on? What? Windows? Oh, I'm sorry. All right. Okay, sorry. Vicky looked distraught, and I was trying to figure out why. But I guess it's none of my business.
I was just pointing out, maybe SpaceX will just take it on themselves to say, you know what, we're going to go to the moon with or without NASA's help.
Yeah, that would be cool if they could find a way to make money on it, though. It has to...
No, it's a long-term prospect. When Amazon started... Amazon actually started turning a profit pretty soon after they launched, but when they first started, it was books. And I think, they didn't expect to make a profit for the first... I forget what it was, 5 years or something like that. They expected to be operating at a loss, and they ended up making a profit much earlier than that. But if you have enough... capital, you can say, okay, here's how the profit's going to happen, even though it might take a few years for it to show up. But it would have to be selling seats. It couldn't just be research.
Speaking of NASA, so the Ingenuity helicopter did successfully fly on the surface of Mars.
Oh, cool.
So it all worked out.
Yeah.
Again, I'm surprised that they're able to do that, but okay.
Yeah.
we're still getting news about the storming of the United States Capitol. This is so bogus.
They still call it that.
So finally, they released the information that, what's his name? Brian Sicknick, the Capitol police officer who died of natural causes.
Oh, he didn't die from being hit in the head with a...
No, he didn't.
Fire... what was it?
Well, they say he died of natural causes, but... And a medical examiner says that all that transpired during the riot played a role in his condition.
His condition?
I just don't believe that at all. Yeah, I don't... It means nothing. It doesn't mean anything.
I know, that's the thing.
It's BS.
It's like the medical profession is up for sale now. But they have
it's like we have this new... Yeah. We've got this new reality that people are taking part in, and it's... so Russia is saying that they will withdraw from the International Space Station.
Because they're
by
being
2025.
Okay.
No, they're not saying why. They're just they're working on a new station.
They want to build their own. Is it something that they want to build of their own, or is it just a new international space station?
As the International Space Station shows signs of falling apart, Putin approves ambitious plan for Russia to make its own replacement. So I don't know if is it no longer going to be international, or...
Yeah, wow.
Apparently there have been a lot of air leaks and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, you know what? That would be, if they're making a bid or a move to make their own, that would be something that I could very much see them doing in response to Trump's announcement of the Space Force.
Yeah. And then, of course, Derek Chauvin is found guilty on all counts in the murder of George Floyd.
That might be worth talking about.
I don't understand it at all.
Yeah,
how could this possibly be a fair trial when the jurors admit that not just they themselves, but their families have been threatened over it? How can...
You've got jury intimidation, both specific and kind of at large. Major politicians calling for people to take matters into their own hands if the wrong verdict comes back. This is a sham trial if there ever was one.
Yeah.
Now, I'll admit I haven't watched the trial. I think it was televised, but I haven't watched it. So it's kind of like, you remember there were a few of them. There was the OJ trial. There was the Rodney King trial, where everybody knew what the outcome was going to be. Then it wasn't there, and then everybody's shocked. But in those cases, those trials weren't televised, so nobody really knows what the jury saw. In this case, I think the trial was televised. I haven't watched it. Someday I might, just to say, okay, if I were a juror, how would I conclude? But the thing is, regardless of how I would conclude going and watching it, I think it's very clear that this jury never got a chance to conclude based on the evidence, because the pressure was already on them how they're going to vote.
Yeah. I don't know what the answer is. I just know that this was not a fair trial.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I would feel more sorry for Chauvin if he wasn't a cop, but
yeah, we've talked about that. That's the thing. It's like
I know.
We've never said all these cops are completely innocent, but the one thing that is interesting about this, and it was actually Dinesh D'Souza who pointed this out in one of the podcasts I listened to, but the left has been just adamant that this guy has to be guilty for all the reasons that are being, brought out by the prosecution and everything. But here's the thing. if this guy is guilty for all the reasons that the prosecution lays out and all the reasons that the left is supporting and all the screaming support from the leftist politicians, what does it mean? It means that this guy, this one guy, as a bad actor, he is the one responsible for George Floyd's death. Not the system, not the police force, not, white, what do they call it, white privilege.
Yeah.
Not any of these systemic racism. None of that is responsible.
You can't have it both ways.
Officer Chauvin is the one responsible.
Either he's responsible or the system must be responsible if George Floyd isn't responsible.
But by insisting that Chauvin is responsible, he must be found guilty, and now he is found guilty, the left, these screaming head liberals, have just invalidated a whole summer's worth of rioting and city burning.
Yeah.
So, what do you have to say for yourself now, you stupid idiots?
Well, you know what? They got what they wanted. We got a bunch of people who were paid to bring our cities down. They got Trump out, and now
they got to act like animals. They
These
got
are
Trump
evil
out,
people, and they're running our country now.
Yeah, and now they get to ruin a guy's life. And
I don't know.
Their mascot is a guy. You know, their anti-racism mascot is a guy who has held a gun to a baby's head.
Yeah, and who OD'd.
And OD'd. Yeah, I mean that's their mascot.
Oh, what it is. This guy
that's
OD'd.
their poster boy. It's like, okay, is that really who you want? All right, well, yeah.
I mean, but that tells you who they are and what they are. And
exactly. That's when you look at that aspect of him and say, okay, that's who they lionize. Well, that tells you everything you need to know about who they are, what their agenda is, and the rightness and justification of what they're clamoring for.
You know what? This is all I'll say, because these jurors did not have a chance to do what they thought was right. There was no way they were going to say not guilty, no matter what they thought.
Right.
And you people out there who are pretending to be anti-racist by saying Black Lives Matter, if you think that you're not going to be forced to do evil soon, you're out of your mind. They are going... If you're a good person, they're going to come after you. Jesus said, if the world hates you, remember they hated me first. And that goes back to a Old Testament prediction that said they hate him without reason. And if you're good, they will hate you. If they don't hate you, I would say you're probably not good. And eventually...
That's true.
They'll harm you if you're good. And this is what you're allowing to happen by pretending to be woke. Because I know some people are just pretending. Not everybody is this stupid.
You know, that's a good point. There's got to be a lot of people in the world that are, you know, that see stuff and they know, oh, this is completely bogus, and yet they go along with it and pretend like it's great and proper and good.
That's one thing that has always bothered the heck out of me, is when people pretend to be stupid.
Yeah. And there's a lot of that in the world today.
I think it's an insult to God. It's like, I gave you a brain, use it.
It's like he gave you a brain
acting
and
like you don't have one.
Use it. Yeah.
That's all the news I got.
Okay. Well, I got a few things. In Australia, a fella bought one of the plastic wrapped heads of lettuce, and he thought he was watching a worm writhing in the plastic until it flicked its tongue out, and he realized it was a snake.
Wow.
Now, here's the thing. His quote, it says, "I kind of completely freaked out when I saw this little tongue come out of its mouth and start flicking around and realized it was a snake. because worms don't have tongues. He wasn't freaked out about a worm that size being in his lettuce that he just brought home from the grocery.
Yeah, I would have been, yeah.
But the fact that it's a snake, turns out the snake was a venomous pale-headed snake that authorities say made the journey to Sydney, Australia from the packing plant in Toowoomba, wrapped in plastic with 2 heads of lettuce. I guess it was able to survive on the lettuce. It goes into a refrigerated truck. Snakes are cold-blooded, right? So their body processes just kind of slow down in the cold. So it was able to survive all the way to the supermarket.
And then when he gets it home, it's waking up and coming out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that reminds me of that urban legend about the little kid who's going fishing and somebody stops by and says, "Hey, you catch anything?" He says, "No, but these worms keep biting me." And they look, and the kid's got a bunch of like baby copperheads, and then the kid dies.
I didn't know that. I hadn't heard that urban legend.
I've heard it from like 3 separate people
among like Boy Scouts and stuff.
My
maybe?
uncles told me this, and
okay,
and then I looked it up. Yeah, that's a classic urban legend.
So would baby copperheads bite and be venomous enough to kill someone?
No.
Now they did say of this particular snake. Let's see. He found what is Wires? The Wires Rescue Organization had a snake handler that took the snake away. I guess he saw that there was a rip in the plastic, so he stuffed it into a food container right away. And this snake organization said, yeah, if you had gotten bitten, you'd have to get to the hospital right away. So
yeah,
this was a serious thing.
I still would have just killed it and not really called.
I think I would have just taken a knife and just cut the head off, and there you go.
Yeah. Well, now it's dead.
I put it down the disposal and turn it on or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of snakes. All right. The next 2 kind of go together, and then believe it or not, the 2 after that do. So, Colorado is auctioning off cannabis-themed license plates. Cannabis as in pot. Selling rights to 14 plates with cannabis-themed phrases, including bong, ganja, tegrity. Is that
you're talking about like
name?
Car license plates with
automobile
like
license plates.
Oh, vanity. Okay, vanity plates with
like vanity plates that are cannabis themed, marijuana themed. So hash. But I don't get tegrity. Tegridy. Tegrity. Is that a cannabis or a pot
brand name or something? I don't know.
Is it? Maybe. Okay. There's a license plate with is it 420? I guess 420 is a slang for smoking pot. The Democratic governor applauded the effort, saying the state is proud of its creativity and ingenuity. Well, that doesn't surprise me that it's a Democratic governor.
Okay, this is stupid. I can get behind the idea of legalizing marijuana. It almost look, the less control the government has, usually the better. And the fact that they control so many things, I don't know. Anytime we can get control away from the government, I think it's usually a good thing. But I'm not a strict libertarian. But then when they turn it into some kind of virtue to take part in it, it's like,
it's one thing to say,
look how great we are. We smoke weed.
That vice. It's kind of like Las Vegas. Isn't Las Vegas one of those cities where prostitution's allowed? Or maybe the whole state of Nevada or something like that?
I don't know.
So it's kind of like, assuming they are, it's kind of like, if Nevada comes out and comes out with some kind of campaign that like elevates prostitution or something like that. It's gross that states would get behind something like that.
It's just stupid. I mean, why would you advertise the fact that we have a bunch of potheads here. I mean,
and they're promoting it they're auctioning them. It's not just that they're making them. It's not just that they're allowing people to get pot themed license plates. They're auctioning them.
It's just kind of bizarre.
It's very bizarre.
All right.
It says bids are being collected until 4:20 on April 20th, a day considered the unofficial pot holiday.
Oh, I guess something happened on that. That day must mean something.
Yeah, well, 420 I think is like a code for pot.
Yeah, I know, but why? Because of the date, or because of something else,
or because maybe it was a police scanner code at one time.
That could be.
Yeah, I don't know why. All right. Anyway, meanwhile, the pot industry wants you to stop using certain pot slang words, including marijuana, which I guess that's
a slang word.
Huh? Yeah, they consider marijuana to be a racist slang. They say any term applied to cannabis other than cannabis is negligent and abusive behavior that we abhor. The term marijuana is a Mexican slur, although it's tolerated when combined with the word medical for special purposes like medical marijuana. The fact that they even care what anybody calls their product is just so stupid.
You know, there's so many people who need to, there's so many things you could care about in this world. I mean, we're tearing ourselves apart here. And you're worried about
what you call pot.
Yeah. I mean, it goes back to, Trump's trying to tell us all, hey, China's taken over your country, and we're worried about who's allowed to use the men's and women's bathrooms, and it's like, it's just so messed up.
It's like that.
It's hard to take any of these people serious.
All right. Next, the next two, believe it or not, are related as well. In Canada, Ottawa, Ontario, a Canadian Parliament member was caught stark naked in a virtual meeting of the House of Commons. They've got a. They've actually got a video.
Is this like a physical place that in the House of Commons? Is that a place, or is it just like an office where he's at home?
Well, it's a House of Parliament. It's kind of like it's a House of. It's kind of like our House of Representatives.
Okay,
it's in that sense, but the House of Commons has members just like our House of Representatives. We have the representatives that we elected. They have a House of Commons and they meet, but they were meeting virtually, so everybody was in their home. And this guy,
okay, so they're in their home and he's naked.
He is like completely top to bottom naked. He's carrying around a cell phone, which just by grateful chance happens to be covering, his private area. He apologized. He says, "This was an unfortunate error. My video was accidentally turned on as I was changing into my work clothes after going for a jog." So he had just gotten back from a jog, getting ready to enter into a meeting of the House of, a session, I don't know, of the House of Commons. And he's changing into his work clothes, and his camera happens to be on.
Maybe he should plan for these meetings a little bit more.
That's be ready in time to start the meeting.
But like, if you're changing after a jog, part of that usually includes a shower. It's not like you just take your clothes off and then put other clothes on.
Yeah. No,
I don't think
exactly.
I don't think he was changing between a jog.
Maybe this was a real thing.
Who walk around naked.
He walks around naked in his house. What's really really weird is this: the video has like two Canadian. Well, one's the Canadian maple leaf flag. The other one, I don't know what exactly. Maybe it's like a Ontario flag or something like that. But two flags next to him. And this is presumably in his house, so he's got these great big flags on flagpoles, and he's walking around naked amongst them.
Maybe he just lost a bet. Wrong.
You know what? That's right. Like that episode of MASH. Was that a bet? Hawkeye lost.
No, he made a bet.
He made a bet.
He said
that's
this place. He said nobody pays attention to anything around here. He said I bet I could walk
through the mess hall. That's right.
But he got all the way there,
and then suddenly Riley like dropped his tray or something like that. O'Reilly, he dropped his tray.
One of them drops her. Somebody drops her tray and says, and then everybody starts yelling,
started whistling and catcalling and everything. And
that was kind of a funny one. It's weird the things that you see it on TV. And of course, he's walking around. He looks pretty nude. When you've got higher def television, you can see little things like his shorts under the tray that's covering him and stuff like that.
Right. Mm-hmm. But
because I watch shows like that, and I'm just kind of curious. It's like I wonder
how did they film that?
Was he nude for this scene? Did he walk around nude? And then I pause it. Oh, okay. He's got a pair of shorts on.
Yeah. I mean, if they had all guys, he could have. It would,
Right.
I mean, that
what a biggie.
But okay, the next one is kind of related. I'm almost tempted because it seems to me that the Walmart stories have slowed down. And maybe because people aren't going to Walmart anymore. But I think that we've got a new. And I hope the Walmart stories pick back up because they're always so funny. But I think we've got a new thing, which is Zoom stories. So House of Commons, House of Commons. What was his name? William Amos was his name. And in Florida, we have a nurse who Zoomcasts a butt injection that she's doing during a courtroom hearing. The case was on the court calendar via Zoom for a status hearing, and she happened to have a patient in there, and she's giving him a shot in the butt, and she's Zoomcasting while she's doing it. I guess maybe her cell phone.
Talk about multitasking.
I know.
You're Florida in nurse court.
Inadvertently broadcasted herself giving a patient a butt injection while waiting for her virtual court hearing to begin. This is in Miami.
You're in court. In court.
Getting ready to go in court. And you're giving someone
an
injection in the rear end. It says the spokesman said during a waiting period prior to the case being brought before the judge, Aguero was in the middle of a procedure that involved a male receiving an injection in the buttocks, which she appears to have inadvertently broadcast. How can you tell that it's a male? I mean, I guess you could tell a man's butt from a woman's butt, but...
Well, I certainly could.
In this picture, it's... I mean, it's kind of, it's not clear.
Okay. Well, here's the thing. I guess what's going on is the Zoom meetings are getting more and more popular, and they're being used more and more. And I mean, I don't do them. I don't have them. I don't want them. Mm-hmm. But if I did, I can. When I do something like that, I kind of prepare for it as if I'm going to sit in an actual meeting.
Yeah.
But I can imagine as you get more used to it, you're kind of like, I have to wait for this to happen. You got to wait for it. So you find other stuff to do because you're able to do that. And then when you get really used to it, you just do it naked. And that's,
that.
Hey, you know what? I could be walking around naked instead of preparing for this, court hearing. So let me take my clothes off real quick and stand in front of a flag.
Next to a big Ontario and a Canada flag.
Yeah. And I guess these things are going to become more and more. But
common.
how many things can happen? You know what I mean? I mean, that's kind of well, we had the one guy who was
the cat lawyer
gratifying himself.
Oh, what? I didn't hear about that.
In the middle of it was like last year. It was.
Well,
it was
I did
like
not
some
report
kind
that.
of.
I don't think I would have reported
there was like
that.
40 people, and he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry."
I'm sorry.
But, I mean, that's as far as you can't get much further than that. I guess you could kill someone.
Yeah, no.
I'm at a court date and I'm killing this guy. I forgot. I didn't know the camera was on.
That when I was working at Harmon, there was a guy who was attending the meeting, but he was attending from his bed. And the thing is, he didn't intend to be like presenting. He accidentally clicked, something on his computer that made him the presenter and made it so that he was presenting his camera. Well, the problem is he was in bed and he was naked. And I guess to make matters worse, this is a guy, and he was a single guy, and he's like Indian, like not American Indian, but Indian, and he's got these like real like silk pillows and sheets and stuff like that, satin pillows and sheets, I guess and stuff like that. The thing is, it's like so suddenly like everybody's screen filled with that.
Yeah, here's the thing. I cannot imagine concentrating on work if I'm naked.
Me neither. It's like, if I'm
naked, like, I want to be dressed, and that's pretty much all I'm focused on until I'm dressed.
I have a hard time not going to put a tie on. I just can't imagine
having a conversation at all until I'm dressed.
Yeah. That's right.
Maybe some people are.
So call me on the phone.
Comfortable naked.
If you wake me up, and I'm just getting out of the shower in the morning, I grab the phone, I answer it. Hey, Dan,
hold on, I gotta get dressed.
Hold on, let me go get dressed, and I'll talk to you. I don't know. It's a whole new world, baby.
We're finding
I guess,
out that there are a lot of people who walk around naked in their homes. And we didn't know about it before, and now we're knowing about it.
I guess that's the thing. It's this is kind of a unveiling of sorts. It's the way the world is that we never knew.
I can promise you'll never see this podcast with me naked.
Nope, me neither. It's we will spare you that. It'll never happen. All right, that's all I've got.
Okay. It's all right. All right.
We'll have some stuff to cut out, so we'll be fine.
Yeah, I have a feeling this is going to be much shorter because we got some editing. But, folks, think about what we said. And, as always,
circle the beads.
And we'll see you next week.
Bye, everyone.